The difference from a person and an angel is easy. Most of an angel is in the inside. Most of a person's on the outside. These are the words of 6-year-old Anna, sometimes called Mouse or Hum, Joy. At 5 years, Anna knew absolutely the purpose of being, knew the meaning of love, and was a personal friend and helper of Mr. God. At 6, Anna was a theologian, mathematician, philosopher, poet, and gardener. If you asked her a question, you'd always get an answer, in due course. On some occasions, the answer would be delayed for weeks or months. But eventually, in her own good time, the answer would come. Direct, simple, and much to the point. She never made 8 years old. She died by an accident. She died with a grin on her beautiful face. She died saying, "I bet Mr. God lets me get into heaven for this." And I bet he did, too. Why does Finn do that? Why does Finn introduce us to that wonderful character of Anna? Arouse our interest, promise so much, and then in the very next line, take it all away and tell us that she never reaches 8. You know, when I first read that, I nearly put the book down. In fact, I did for a while. But I picked it up again. And I'm glad that I did, because it's a wonderful story. It's a lovely story. And even though Finn tells us right from the start that Anna never sees out her 7th year, it's not a sad story. It's a beautiful story. But knowing that an accident is awaiting Anna and that it will take her young life, it colours, changes the way I read the rest of the book. I'm not sure how, but it does. And it certainly changed how I read of her death at the end of the book. Knowing where the story was leading changed my experience of being taken through that story. I don't know why Finn did that. I don't know why he chose to tell Anna's story in that way, telling us where it ends, just as he begins it. But his decision shaped the way I heard the story that he had to tell. I think something similar happens with our Palm Sunday liturgy. We begin the liturgy of Palm Sunday with the joyful cries of Hosanna of the people as Jesus enters Jerusalem, hailed as King. But in the very next stage of our liturgy, almost immediately, that joy is taken away from us as we read of his passion. They took the colt to Jesus and threw their cloaks on its back, and he sat on it. Many people spread their cloaks on the road, others greenery which they'd cut from the fields. And those who went in front and those who followed were all shouting, "Hosanna! Blessings on him who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessings on the coming kingdom of our father David. Hosanna in the highest heavens." Pilate questioned him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "It's you who say it," he answered. And the chief priests brought many accusations against him. Pilate questioned him again, "Have you no reply at all? See how many accusations they bring against you." But to Pilate's amazement, Jesus made no further reply. When the crowd went up and began to ask Pilate the customary favor, Pilate answered them, "Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" For he realized it was out of jealousy that the chief priests had handed him over. The chief priests, however, had incited the crowd to demand that he should release Barabbas for them instead. Then Pilate spoke again. "But in that case," he said, "what am I to do with the man called the King of the Jews?" They shouted back, "Crucify him." "Why?" Pilate asked them. "What harm has he done?" They shouted all the louder, "Crucify him." So Pilate, anxious to placate the crowd, released Barabbas for them, and having ordered Jesus to be scourged, handed him over to be crucified. The soldiers led him away to the inner part of the palace, that is, the praetorium, and called the whole cohort together. They dressed him up in purple, twisted some thorns into a crown and put it on him. They began saluting him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They struck his head with a reed and spat on him. They went down on their knees to do him homage, and when they'd finished making fun of him, they took off the purple and dressed him in his own clothes. They led him out to crucify him. They enlisted a passerby, Simon of Cyrene, father of Alexander and Rufus, who was coming in from the country to carry his cross. They brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. They offered him wine mixed with myrrh, but he refused it. Then they crucified him and shared out his clothing, casting lots to decide what each should get. It was the 3rd hour when they crucified him. The inscription giving the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews," and they crucified 2 robbers with him, one on his right and one on his left. The passers-by jeered at him. They shook their heads and said, "Aha, so you would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days? Then save yourself. Come down from the cross." The chief priests and the scribes mocked him amongst themselves in the same way. "He saved others," they said. "He cannot save himself. Let the Christ, the King of Israel, come down from the cross now for us to see it and believe." Even those who were crucified with him taunted him. When the 6th hour came, there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour. And at the 9th hour Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you deserted me?" When some of those who stood by heard this, they said, "Listen, he's calling on Elijah." Someone ran and soaked a sponge in vinegar, and putting it on a reed, gave it to him to drink, saying, "Wait, and see if Elijah will come and take him down." But Jesus gave a loud cry and breathed his last. And the veil of the temple was torn in 2 from top to bottom. The centurion who was standing in front of him had seen how he had died and said, "In truth, this man was a son of God." Unlike the story of Mr. God, This Is Anna, I think I do know something of why that joy is turned to grief so quickly. At least I know one of the reasons behind it, and I'm not sure it's a good reason. It has its roots in the reformation of the Second Vatican Council, the reformation of the liturgy that came about as a result of that. Prior to the Second Vatican Council, there had been two feasts. The feast of the Passion, Passion Sunday, and the following week, Passion Sunday celebrated on the 5th Sunday of Lent, and the following week, the 6th Sunday of Lent, we celebrated Palm Sunday. Two distinct feasts, two distinct liturgies. But they were joined as a result of the Second Vatican Council. The Second Vatican Council wanted to encourage a fuller liturgical experience, greater participation of the people, and a greater understanding of what the liturgies were about. They wanted to restore the order and encourage people to join in the liturgies, particularly around Holy Week. They wanted Holy Thursday, the Mass of the Lord's Supper, to be celebrated in the evening rather than in the morning, for example. And they wanted to have the Passion celebrated on Good Friday. They wanted the week before to be Palm Sunday, to begin Holy Week and mark the beginning of Holy Week with the triumphal entry into Jerusalem. But there was a fear among those, at least some of those, responsible for shaping the liturgy. And their fear was this, that if the Passion of Jesus is only read on Good Friday, people wouldn't be there to hear it. They believed that the majority of people were happy going to church on a Sunday, but they weren't interested in going to church in numbers during Holy Week. And so people wouldn't hear the Passion. And they believed that it was essential that they did. For us to have a true experience of the resurrection, we need to have some kind of experience of Christ's Passion too. So instead of encouraging more people to go to church and be a part of that liturgy on Good Friday, they decided that on Good Friday we would use John's account of Christ's Passion, and one of the other accounts would be read on Palm Sunday. That's how we end up with a reading of the triumphal entry and of the Passion on the same day, because someone somewhere thought we wouldn't listen to the Passion otherwise. I'm not convinced that's a good reason for distorting the liturgy of Holy Week and the beginning of Holy Week. I'll leave you to judge for yourselves whether you think it's a good reason or not. But that we listen to the Passion of Jesus right at the beginning of the story, that our joy is immediately taken from us and our focus shifted onto the Passion. I think that changes the way we listen, we participate in the rest of the liturgies of Holy Week. It's not as if we need to be told where Holy Week is leading. We know already. We've been reminded of that time and time again through the scriptures. Jesus warning his disciples what awaits him when he gets to Jerusalem. Nevertheless, the introduction of an account of Christ's Passion at the beginning of Holy Week, immediately after we hear the account of his joyful, his triumphant entry into Jerusalem, colours, changes our experience of the rest of the week. I wonder if that's your experience too. But just as Anna's death isn't the end of Anna's story, so too Christ's death isn't the end of his. In the final chapter of Mr. God, This Is Anna, Finn begins with that tragic accident that takes 7-year-old Anna's life. But the end of that chapter, the chapter ends with Anna's laughter and Finn continuing to learn lessons from her. our Easter story doesn't end on Good Friday, but on Easter Sunday. And I wonder what effect listening to Christ's Passion twice during that week has on our experience of that story. The story begins with joy and ends with joy. They're the bookends that frame that story. And I wonder if we wouldn't be better being left to enjoy the shouts of Hosanna and the joy of Christ's triumphal entry for a little while for what it is, rather than focusing on what it becomes. I'm not sure that shaping our liturgy because of fear that some may not participate allows for the best experience of those who do.